Sal, you're on mute.
Good evening, listeners. This is Bless Radio. It's 6 p.m. UK time, and this is the Spiritual Discussion Program. I'm Saad in Southeast London, and with me as usual is Gregory. How are you, Gregory, and how is the weather where you are?
One is fine, and it's very, very cold.
Same here in London, very cold. I think it's been minus 2, I think, today. Then it did rise above 0, but it's now back dark again, so it's back to minus, I think. So yes, welcome listeners to the Spiritual Discussion Program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Aprusheen. And every week we have a new topic for discussion. The topic for tonight is acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. I'll repeat that. Acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down the home page, you'll come to a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message, in the light of truth, by Aprusheen, is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized, and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the 5 senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Aprusheen. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace, if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic for discussion tonight is acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. It's a bit of a mouthful, so I'll repeat it again. Acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting. That is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. Now, I don't think it's a surprise how we have picked the topic. I'm sure people have been, if those of us who have been watching the news or listening to the news, there was an event at the weekend where USA, I would call it abducted. I was going to use the word kidnap, but I would say abducted the president of Venezuela and his wife, Nicolas Maduro. And so I'm sure that came as a surprise to most of us, but you could clearly, I can say, see some self-interest there. So that was why I chose that in the beginning of the topic. And then, well, our show is about spiritual discussion. So we want to see when things happen in life, why is it happening? Or from the spiritual point of view. So not that we are going to completely think of this one event, because so many things have happened in life where maybe things, you can pick an example of self-interest there, and then you think, is that the way it's supposed to be? Or what about God's will, or divine will, as we've called it? We have to think of that too, you know, when we are considering from the spiritual point of view. So we will go into that discussion more deeply in a moment. And I'd like to begin, Gregory, as usual, and listeners, with looking up the words in our topic for tonight. In a way, I think the words are quite straightforward, but I would just like to do that anyway. So just to remind everyone, the topic for tonight is acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. So the first word there is acting. Now, okay, so let me see. I've got two meanings given for that word acting. So the first one, it says taking action, doing something. Gregory, how's that for the discussion tonight?
Doing something is appropriate.
Okay, that's good. And then the next one, in the dictionary for again the meaning of the word acting, I have is behave in the way specified. Okay, so that's but they haven't told us what they. Okay, the way. Maybe I'm going to leave that one out. Let me just, because I think I have a better word than that. Yes, they say the art of the art or occupation of performing fictional roles in plays, films, and television. So that's acting there. So Gregory, what do you say about this one? Is that suitable or not suitable? But is that more useful for our discussion?
That's an adjective of doing something.
Okay, that's a good point. But it's a specific type, so it's in film, acting or performing. So yes, you are doing something, but you're performing in a particular role. That's the way they defined it. But yes, doing something. I guess you're right. If you look at a general way, that's what it is. Okay, I'm going to move on now, and next word I'm going to use is the two words put together: self-interest. Because self and interest separately, I don't think gives enough pointer. So there we say self-interest. So that one I found in the dictionary. It says, this is the meaning of the word self-interest: one's personal interest or advantage, especially when pursued without regard for others. And then they gave an example of that. The assumption that individuals are primarily motivated by self-interest. So let me repeat again the meaning of the word self-interest. One's personal interest or advantage, especially when pursued without regard for others. So Gregory, what do you say about this meaning?
It is appropriate and can be utilized.
Okay, that's good. Then the next one I wanted to was I combined a few words together: in the light of. And the dictionary gave me this: taking something into consideration. So taking something into consideration. That's a pointer. Okay, good. And the last one, again, I'm combining the two words together: divine will. And I put the will of God. Let me see if I'm thinking I didn't check this in the dictionary. I think I put this in my own words. So yes, let me ask you this, Gregory. Divine will, is that calling it the will of God? Is that a correct definition there?
It's a pointer, but another expression could have been used because the effect of the will are the laws. So one may say, in the light of divine laws.
In the light of divine.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Will gives that very strong impression of a personality.
Right.
Right. Therefore, but the effects of these will are the laws which operate and which has always operated from time immemorial.
Okay, I'm going to keep a note of that in our discussion. So the effect of the divine will are the laws, which is, yes. Greg, can you just say it again, just so I can take that in?
The effect
Yeah.
of the divine will, these are the laws or the divine laws which have always been.
Okay.
So there was this expression of in light of the divine will.
Yes.
So one could use in that word light, in this particular case, could be used as a perspective. So
yes.
In the perspective of the divine laws.
I got it. Okay. I'm not going to change the topic title now. but I will keep that in mind and I will quote that as we go on. So thank you for that. Actually, a question came to me as you were saying that, Gregory, because you said that the effect of the divine will are the laws which, let's say, can I ask on that, Gregory?
Yes, of course. I can ask any question.
Yes, I want to ask on that is, does everything that happens in life or in this world always happen within these divine laws, or can something happen outside of these divine laws?
When something is said to resonate with the divine laws, then it happens within the divine laws, because it is then furthering. When it is said something operates or does not resonate within the divine laws, it means its effect opposed these divine laws. It means this effect do not resonate, and therefore their effect do not swing along in the perspective of this divine will. That means that which has come forward is very likely to be very temporal, because they would not have any support for continuity.
Thanks very much for that answer there, Gregory. So I'm getting a picture now where you can act, let's say, in line or in with the flow of the divine. That may not give a good picture. I think you were saying, again, Gregory, if you can just repeat one more time. So you can act in two ways. Resonate. I think you used the word resonate.
Yes.
You can resonate.
You can imagine, in accordance with the laws, the divine laws, or the laws of creation, or laws of nature, when we take a breath, when we breathe in accordance with the divine laws, we need to breathe out to have that balance. If, however, we refuse to breathe in, or we breathe in and refuse to breathe out, then our continuity will be short-lived, because it will upset those laws that permit continuity. That is what one is referring to.
Thank you for clarifying that. And in a very good picture of you have given with it, or example you've given with breathing in and breathing out, which of course we're very familiar with. So, and you can easily picture that, if we try to breathe in but not breathe out, we know what to expect from that. Let's say we'll have some difficulties. It may be even fatal outcome. And obviously that's not very constructive or, let's say, helpful for our, you could say, our life. And obviously, yes, a very good way to represent how the laws work. So thank you for that. Now, so again, to repeat the topic for tonight, it says acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. And in the dictionary, they gave a clue there that self-interest, it's, yes, your personal interest, but without regard to others. So it's like selfish. Which sounds
very correct.
So it then, obviously, if you think that way, it's like you're ignoring or even not thinking, ignoring and even not caring about your effect of your interests on others. So almost like a one-sidedly, you're doing something. So what I'm trying to point to there, Gregory, that is how it seems the world works. Or even people claim this is our interest, especially when they talk about countries. This is our interest. And then automatically it looks like that must be again somebody else's interest. And then you think, okay, that can work for a time in some area, but when it has to interact with someone else, your self-interest may not align with their interest, or it may even harm the other person or other people or country when we think of it. And immediately you say, okay, that doesn't mean you will have really a success. It might be a success for a little while, but then there will be some repercussion because somebody is getting hurt because of your self-interest. So when you, as I say, I'm just saying it out aloud, thinking aloud, and trying to look at it logically, and saying, well, it doesn't seem to work. And yet, Gregory, everybody, or let's say a lot of us, follow this path. Even though it sounds so, how can I say, very short-term benefit, not really a true benefit. What I would like to ask Gregory, when people say these things, that they are thinking of their self-interest, they want to do this because of their self-interest, whether it's for them as a person, or a company, or a society, or a country, because different people would do that, and like a president or a prime minister, they would make some decision out of self-interest. That's what these are the phrases that people use. And inside one wonders, is that really the right way? So Gregory, how can one succeed with self-interest?
One only need to give a more inclusive picture, and then the listener may draw its own personal or general conclusion. The individual human personality on earth did not just jump out of the sky. That individual came through parents. Therefore, that individual is in a society, which society starts from the parents or from those nearest to it. So one should already consider that. One must also consider that the activities in nature, in creation, are interdependent. From the plants, we are able to have nutrients, and also from the animals. From fellow human personalities, the individual is able to receive of certain blessings which itself could not accomplish. By certain blessings, one could consider music, which is quite appropriate. Just as he himself or herself has received, the need is there to make use of it and to pass it on to others, such that just as he himself has benefited from what it has received. The need is there to pass it on to others such that others will benefit. Only in such a way will there be continuity. If, however, the individual has received something, has made use of it, and held it back for itself only, then you have the scenario where that which is necessary for continuity and balance is violated. Holding it back and seeking out for yourself and yourself only. One may categorize that as breathing in and completely refusing to breathe out. The same thing happens for all those who seek to grab that which they see in others, and in doing that, they hold it within themselves. So the picture becomes very clear. For as with all things, there must be a balance, whether it be between human personalities, between the individual and nature, the individual and countries or states, is immaterial. Again and again, it has to be one for all and all for one. One may also look at the human family. It is the woman who carries the child from its conception to its delivery. Can one ever think of the scenario where the woman refuses to give birth to the child because of her selfish interest? Impossible. So for many who harbor this selfish interest, the repercussions in accordance with the laws of creation, that of reciprocal activity, and also that of the attraction of homogeneous species, and especially that of gravitation, for the individual that holds such selfish interest, it becomes that his thoughts, his activities become so very dense. Whereas if he himself or herself has passed on the blessing that it has received, it becomes stronger and lighter. Because he has withheld them from others, whether it be knowledge, whatever one may call it, you will find that that individual becomes very dense. In that process, the streams of blessings in creation now push that individual to deeper depths, where his or her views become narrow and narrower. So when it concerns selfish interest, the individual can already perceive where things are leading to.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for this picture that you've painted for us about we don't live on our own, we live with others. Like you give the example of the parents, we came through our parents, so they took care of us. We didn't just start acting of our self-will. No baby or child can imagine that or do that. They have to go through, they need support, which means it's support from someone else, not your own support. So that shows, and of course we are not on our own. I mean, that's, we already know it, but somehow we maybe pretend or ignore that there's others in this world. And you gave a very good example about we need nutrients to grow and live, which is not coming from even other humans. It's it's from the nature. Other animals and plants, we need them to be able to live on this earth. So that's, you just need to think a little only to realize that. And then that means you have to take those things in account when you are living. Then there's, of course, there's one thing I note in Gregory nature. You find that the strong, when an animal is hunting another one for its meal, it will be, let's say, a strong animal looking for a weak one, or to catch a weak one to be able to have his meal, you can say. So there's this picture also of yes, we need each other, but for success, that's where I was coming from. How do we live successfully, with this so-called self-interest? Because in a way, everybody's self-interest, they want to survive. They want to maybe even thrive, not just survive. But then it seems, in order to thrive or survive, you need to live on on the expense of something else. And if you're talking about food, there's something where you have to eat, and that is not as being, how can I put it? Yes, it's a nutrient, but then something has to be expended there. So there's a loss for that has been expended. I hope I'm not, confusing people, or just were people able to follow me.
I think you are.
Okay, I'm trying to give another picture, another angle. Definitely, you've already pointed about us having cooperating, all for one and one for all. And I see that, for sure. At the same time, when you look at the world, the stronger seems to survive, while the weaker seems to, how can I say, die out, if I can say that. So, how do we explain that, Gregory, in accordance in this? It seems that there's something expended of that. Somebody lives at the expense of another. So something you have to eat for you to survive. Is there something? Does that? I don't know if it's something bad or it's just the way the life works.
Actually, when one considers what love is, love merely, when expressed very plainly, refers to the welfare. When one considers that which is referred to as welfare, it means for those who are at different levels of maturity, those who are more matured should show examples on how to cooperate with others, to live with others. Why? Because in nature, in creation, there are others others that can be perceived with one's physical senses, and others that can be perceived with one's intuition. In nature, there are different levels of maturity. The simplest example one can take, look at the case of education, where the child first goes to the primary school, the kindergarten before the primary, and then goes to the secondary and maybe does some advanced studies. Would you then say that because you have people who are in the kindergarten stage, those who are in the primary school, they are more matured and therefore should suppress those in the kindergarten? When one has children, you will find that the parents, to a large extent, care for these children. Should they suppress these children because they are more matured? These are the questions that many do not ask, but they bring themselves way below the animals, and they now create examples. They think those people who are stronger. The challenge is stronger in what? If they are stronger in their personal maturity, then it should be their task to educate those who are not as matured as themselves, else they have failed in their tasks. So when you hear that, okay, the stronger will overcome the weak, what one did not ask, the stronger in what? The more matured a human personality is, the more that personality will be more understanding in supporting others who are
Dear listeners, I'm just reconnecting with Gregory. Somehow we got disconnected, and so apologies for the technical issue there. I think, Gregory, you're back now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not quite sure what happened, but somehow we lost our connection, but we are back again. So just checking, did you finish what you were saying there?
Partially. I don't know how much was...
Yes, maybe you can just recap a little bit.
Could you ask the question, please?
Yes, the question I was asking is basically about the self-interest of the strong person or strong whatever creature that we have to overcome, how can I say, almost wiping out the weak one because they are stronger, And in your answer, you have said that the strong one is not about strong as such, it's more about maturity. And so somebody might be more mature and another one not so mature. So the mature one is supposed to help the less mature one to become more mature, you can say. So I think that was the, in short, is what you were telling us about.
Correct. What one was stressing along that line is that you have the case of family or the case of children in the kindergarten stage, and those who are one step higher in the primary school. Should they be suppressing those in the kindergarten because they are more matured or they are more knowledgeable? That has never been the case. Therefore, those who use these expressions that the stronger definitely overcome the weak, they have used these expressions wrongly because the motive which they harbor is wrong. The stronger overcoming the weak only means that individual who is more matured is able, using his own maturity, to help others who are not as matured, and therefore to overcome the challenges that others have. That is the only way to overcome the weak, not to look down on them or to decimate them. One can also look into the health sector. When you have the individual who is unwell in health, will those who are stronger in health thereby suppress those who are not very well? What should be happening is for those who are well in health, they should put their resources together to see how they can be of help to others and not how to eliminate them from the society. That is what welfare is, and that is what love is.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for this explanation you have given, and answering this question about strong overcoming the weak, when it's not really, that is not what it's about. It's about strong supporting the weak, and then both of them flourishing rather than being destructive to eliminate the weak. That's not what it's about. There's room for everyone. Not about competition to eliminate someone out of the take them out of the picture. So thank you so much for that. I just want to let the listeners know you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth. The Grail Message by Uprushin. If you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, that's Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. I'll repeat that. Acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting, that is blessradio1, that's the number one, .com. If you scroll down on the home page, you'll come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. Also, we are broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box. Bless Radio 1, that's the number one there again, space, Grail Message, space, the topic of our show tonight, which is acting in our self-interest in the light of divine law. And of course, after the show, you can listen to a recording of this show tonight. We finish at 8 p.m. UK time. So you just need to go again back to youtube.com and type in the same words in the search box, which are Bless Radio 1, that's the number one there, space, Grail Message, space, acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. And one other place you can listen to us is Zeno. Go to Zeno, that's ZENO.FM/radio/bless radio 1. That's the number one there. Now, we'll be talking about our self-interest. And we've realized and recognized that, of course, we are not living on our own, and we need to cooperate with what is there around us, whether it be animal or another fellow human being or even plants. So that's quite clear. If we are to, when we call be successful in our survival or in to being thriving, because it's not just about us or one species that needs to survive or thrive. There's all the other species that are also there. So we work together in that. Now, the other thing, Greg, we're talking about divine will, and I know you said that is shown by the effects, or we can see that the effect of the divine law, or another way we can express it, the laws of nature or laws of God, which then, Gregory, makes me think about, well, what are these laws of nature or laws, divine laws? Can you please tell us, yes, how do we get to know about these divine laws? And
the divine laws, or first the divine will, which you yourself have put in as part of this show. One had mentioned that it is the effect of the divine will that you have, or that is meant by divine laws. For the divine will is personal. Now, the power out of divinity, or the power out of, from which we have a source where all the power issues, that power is always in motion. And that power resonates in its activities with the divine will. The expression of this divine will is what one refers to as the divine law. Since that power is in motion, therefore, one must grasp aright that these divine laws are also in motion. And the question will be, what is this motion? Motion in itself becomes a law, not only in divinity, but outside of divinity. What is outside of divinity is what one may refer to as creation. Before creation came into being, divinity always existed. That being the case, one will find that these laws, which we are referring to, are the laws of motion, and therefore they are ubiquitous, always there, being supported by the power which radiates through them. Now, one may therefore further reflect that what kinds of motion do we have there? There are basically two types. That motion in which the end of the motion flows back to the beginning, and that motion in which the end does not flow back to the beginning. That scenario where you have the end flowing back to the beginning, one may also categorize that as a reciprocal activity. So any operation in creation which has to be considered in terms of motion, because all that is in creation is in motion, one must consider that which one refers to as a reciprocal activity. Therefore, the law of reciprocal action. An action is an activity. Whether that activity is initiated by those who lie higher or by human personalities on earth, whatever one may call it. That the end flows back to the beginning gives the strongest picture of an attraction. Were it not so, the end will not go back to the beginning. And this is only possible where you have things of the same species. So this may also be categorized as the law of attraction of homogeneity. So you have from one observation, two laws have now presented themselves. So we now have the law of attraction of homogeneous species. Homogeneous species only refers to as those species which are complete within themselves. That's where you have the attraction of homogeneous species. Not the law of attraction of inhomogeneous. One should distinguish this very carefully. And then on the other hand, you have that law in which the end does not flow back to the beginning. In that specific case, the end does not flow back to the beginning because the end is denser than the beginning, or the end has cooled off as compared to the beginning. Whenever we have a cooling off, whenever we have a density, then that refers to gravitation. So we have the law of gravitation, which, if one puts them in different categories, we have the law of spiritual gravitation, and here in the world of matter, we also have the law of gravitation within the world of matter, where that which is heavier or that which is denser sinks, and that which is not as dense rises. These things are self-consistent when the individual observes them very carefully. One must also stress that a thorough understanding of that which has just been put forward, a thorough understanding of it can be found within the work in the light of truth. The Grail Message of Abraham. For in that work, which work expresses what light is, that is substantiality, and what truth is, which is the law, and how the light, the truth, and the power, how these things work, these can be found in this work, and is the task of every individual to weigh and examine what it is. Only then will the individual come to a better understanding and know how to proceed here in the world of matter or hereafter.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Gregory, for this picture of the laws, or the divine laws that you've given us, and how they work, which clearly point. You can see, our activity, how we work, within these laws, and you can see there's an action and there's a consequence to the action, reaction, you can say. Whether it is law of reciprocal action, which Jesus said that in another way, what sowing and reaping, what you sow you shall reap. That is the same thing as law of reciprocal action. Then there was the law of attraction of homogeneous species, or another phrase that we use, birds of a feather flock together, or like attracts like. But I know, Gregory, you explained that in a more complete way about what species are. We're talking about complete species. I know that sounds a bit technical, but it's just important to have these things accurately explained or described so that there's no misunderstanding. Like attracts like. You can say, oh, if you talk, let's say, about human beings, that could mean, oh, male attracting male, or female attracting female. But that's not what we mean. We're talking about a species. So that species example we give is what let's say you sow rice. Sorry, that's not really attracting, but if you plant rice, you can only expect, rice from it. If you plant apple, you will get apple, not banana. So this means you stick to whatever you plant, that's the same species you will reap. What you sow, you shall reap. It's like that. I know I'm diverting from so there's a law of reciprocal action, and then there's a law of attraction of homogeneous species. Let me put it another way to just make a clarity about it. So when you do good, you attract good. Good attracts good. If you do evil, you will attract evil. And then you can see that justice in this law, how the operation of justice there. And then the third law is, we call it the law of spiritual gravitation, to be more exact in the phrase. So what is heavy sinks, we know that. What is light rises. Of course, that's in a physical way, we know that. But it's not only physical. Even with our thoughts, non-physical things, they also obey this law of gravity. So, for example, when you do good, you feel light. Yes, your physical weight has not changed, but that there's an inner lightness felt sense within you. So these laws are completely universal in every, let's say, section of this creation that exists, whether it's material or non-material. So another word you can use, so we are talking about divine will, we talk about divine laws that come out of that. You can say this is also the natural laws, we can express it that way, but also the laws of creation. There are so many ways to describe them, and they mean the same thing. So, yes, thank you, Gregory, for giving that example. And
sorry, may I need a little more clarification?
Yes, go ahead.
That which is referred to as the attraction of homogeneous species. Some of the clearest examples which are available is that of resonance. When resonance is mentioned, here we are in this discussion in which one speaks and the signals are carried. That which has to receive the signal, if that does not resonate with the same frequency of the signal, the signals will just pass by. You wouldn't get any information. But right now, in our discussion, you are able to hear me because the vibrations which the systems send out is being picked up by another receiver which is able to vibrate with the same frequency. And that is what many refer to in the so-called sciences as resonance. So they say we resonate, all right? And that's why I'm able to hear from you, I'm able to pick from you. I'm always thinking about you, and all of a sudden I can pick from you. It means there's an attraction. If there were no attraction, then there will be no reception, because the waves will just pass the individual by. That means it's unable to pick the waves. Therefore, many, when the law of attraction of homogeneity is mentioned, what comes to their attention is that of resonance. And that has proved to be very helpful in many scenarios.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for making that clarification. Now, there's another aspect I'm thinking, I guess to remind the listeners the topic we're discussing tonight, acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. So we've talked about, obviously, self-interest, that's very clear. Then we talked about the divine will, which is expressed in the divine laws. Another thing that came to my mind, and the laws sound very, how can I say, I was going to use the word technical, very, scientific in a sense that, this leads to this, there's a cause and there's a consequence, there's a gravity. So it's all very, how can I say, well structured there. Another thing came to me, we talked about society, community, parents, and so on. So we are taught, we go to school, and the parents also educate us, and the society also educate us. One of the things that people learn, you could say, are principles or morals. And again, you do not steal, you do not kill, there are so many, you could say principles or rules that we human beings, let's say, in almost everywhere in the world, that they are the same there. However, we haven't talked about it too much at the moment, but we do have free will, so we can choose to obey or disobey these rules. Just the same as we can obey or disobey the laws, the natural laws, the divine laws. We can do the same there. So my question is, Gregory, when we talk about self-interest, and we know that we are living with other human beings and other creatures on this earth, so we can do something out of our, in quote, self-interest, but it may harm others, if it is very selfish, let's say. Now, if you have morals, you would say, wait a minute, I'm not meant to steal, I'm not meant to murder. In other words, I'm not meant to put someone, make harm to the other fellow human beings in the world that I'm living in. And that is a principle, that's a moral point of morality there. So, Gregory, what about that? Is it not, we need that as well? Or is that part of the divine will, morality, that we are meant to, let's say, know about, or to know about that?
You yourself, with the title of the topic, there is the divine will. And this divine will is expressed, or this divine will are expressed as the laws of motion, in which we now have the laws of creation, the laws of nature. Now, your question basically is talking about morality. The question should be, what is morality? That which is moral must resonate with the laws of nature or the laws of creation. If it doesn't resonate, then you have that it opposes or it paralyzes. When one considers thou shalt not kill, and one says, oh, is this moral, or thou shalt not steal? The picture should be, when it is said thou shalt not kill, is it eliminating the individual human personality? If that be the case, then it should be that if that individual that is planning to eliminate another human personality, if he were eliminated, how would he consider such? Of course, there will be disapproval. This is not right. Just as an individual has the right to develop itself to self-consciousness, so also are others. And therein comes one for all and all for one. The same thing goes with stealing. In fact, whatever has been pressed out in the so-called Ten Commandments, these are only pictures which have been presented due to the maturity at that particular time. You will find the so-called laws of morality are expressed, or the laws of nature, the laws of creation, are also expressed as the laws of morality, which has to be maintained as best as possible. The individual must weigh and examine very carefully to have a better understanding of it.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for bringing that out, that morality is part of the divine will showing in the laws. It's the same as the laws, just we express it in different words, killing or stealing or whatever harm that we can be doing. But it's just, the principles are always the same, fundamentally. It may not have been expressed, oh, do not kill or do not steal, in the law, of law of motion or law of reciprocal action may not have been mentioned directly, but it's inside. If you look at it, deeply, you can see it's there. So it is there. So thank you for that. Now. So, Gregory and listeners, just going back to this event of the USA, I will use the word kidnap now, the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, in this, let's say, unorthodox way, for whatever reason it is, let's call it self-interest, because that's what they claim. It is our self-interest. But then people are upset. Some people are getting upset. Of course, the president himself, obviously, we understand that, but there's a country involved as well. So, some people may be happy, others may be upset. We know that, but the point is to think: is this how we are meant to, take actions out of our self-interest? What about the other persons or people that are affected? Is there some, how can I say, case or moral case, immoral thing happening, or some principle being broken? I was even going to use the word human rights. Even people are using the word international law. Everybody has a right as a human being in how in their, let's say, their freedom on how they live. And then somebody thinks, oh, I think I can do what I want. about this other person. And you're thinking, is that right? Just because you have the resources of ability that you can do something, does it make it right that you can do that? So these questions have arisen. I'm only pointing out this particular case because it's in the news in a very big way right now. However, I'm sure there are many cases, you can call it, of injustice going on. People are upset out of that injustice. So Gregory, what I'm thinking now, we talk about divine will, divine laws. Also, you can call it, there's love in these laws, there's also justice in these laws. It's not a human one, it's a divine one. And then there's the human actions. So the topic for tonight is acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. So we are trying to understand when somebody has made an action out of self-interest, let's say, but how is it, you could say, in the light of divine will? Is that right? Or is it something very selfish or, destructive even?
One will explain this with a very clear example by referring to past happenings. There was the case that occurred almost about 2,000 years ago in the land of the Jews in Israel. Caiaphas was the high priest, and there was Jesus preaching, explaining the laws of nature, the laws of creation, he himself being the personification of the divine love, explaining, blessing many of those who came across his path, possibly healing them for those who did ask. However, the chief priests at that time felt that his authority is being encroached upon. And he felt even if Christ hasn't done anything wrong, he felt slighted and was prepared to eliminate him and started planning to eliminate him. And subsequently, he precipitated a scenario in which the chief judge at that time, the Romans, said very clearly, I find no guilt with this man. However, the chief priest said, that doesn't matter. He was only looking out for his own selfish purposes. And he even expressed the guilt. Let the guilt be upon us and our children. Now, the question one may ask, where does one stand in this scenario? How do people picture this particular scenario? Where out of selfish interest, one goes to another, one even plans to kill another, and even put that into effect cunningly. That's guilt. The redemption of that guilt is a different discussion. Therefore, one will only ask many to cast their gaze upon that particular time. And may you also use that to look at what is happening in recent times. By their actions, by their activities, they reveal what they have deep within them, and therefore, before long, pass judgment upon themselves.
Thanks very much, Gregory, for this answer. It's good to see like an example of, let's say, another event which we can reflect on. And, you know, as they say, compare and contrast with some other event, so that, and I like in a way, Gregory, instead of giving an answer directly to the question, you're giving another scenario to reflect, for us to reflect on and use our own senses and ability to make sense of it, and then find our own answer, which, let's say, makes us responsible for that answer, rather than dependent on somebody else's answer and just become like a robot to follow that. So that's good that you make us make our own effort to assess the situation with our own abilities and come to our own conclusion from it. So thank you for that. I want to now let the listeners know that you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Uptrushing. If you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic that we're discussing tonight is acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. Acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. If you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, and or use WhatsApp. And there's one other way to contact us, which is by going to the website where we are broadcasting, that is blessradio1, that's the number 1.com. If you scroll down on the homepage, you'll come across a box called Bless Chat. There you can type in any questions or comments. Now, we're also broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again that's the number 1 there, space, Grail Message, space, the topic of our show, which is acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. And after the show tonight, that's 8 p.m. UK time, you can listen to a recording of this show again on YouTube. So go to youtube.com and type in the search box exactly the same words, which are Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1 there, space, Grail Message, space, acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. And then there's one other place you can listen to us, which is by called Zeno. So I'll spell that. That's ZENO.FM/radio/bless radio 1. That's the number 1 there. Now, we've talked about self-will, self-interest. We talked about the divine will and the laws. We talked about morality, principles, and you could say our actions and consequences of our actions. Now, Gregory, we talked about this earlier about the strong overcoming the weak, but that's not how it's meant to be. A strong is supposed to support the weak to make them also strong. Now, what I want to ask you, Gregory, that sounds good, of course, but it sounds a little bit less idealistic rather than reality in terms of the way human beings are. It seems that human beings, I know it looks like the whole thing, the way human beings act, is completely incompatible with the way, what is divine will and the laws, the natural laws, completely incompatible. And yet, we human beings keep pursuing that, our interest, our will, whatever the way to express it. And why I'm saying that, Gregory, is that because it's like, we as a child, you listen to fairy stories. It's a world of idealism. When you become an adult, let's say you see the real world, what human beings are really like, which is not about idealism, it's about maybe competition. As I said, the strong overcoming the weak. That's what the world out there seems to be. So yes, there is, let's say, idealism, and then there is the harsh world of the reality, which is, let's say, different or even opposing that idealism. And so I could almost say fairy story, which people might consider to be fantasy, and then when you turn into adult, you see, actually, I need to fight, I need to do this, to achieve, or maybe to get a job, or to win something. It seems to be the world is a different, I don't want to use the word unfair, but it's not quite idealistic. That's what I want to distinguish. And so, how can, Gregory, we come to, let's say, these principles of morality and so on, which people are not, let's say, following in the majority of the world. Only on the surface they act that way, but in reality they are not that way. So, and then when we talk about success, people think, the success is through the, let's say, not through the idealism, through the, let's say, through the, I don't know what the right word to use for it. So my question on this, Gregory, is, how can one not really see that this world of idealism, or the laws, following the laws, is we will really succeed? I know it's in theory, let's say in theory or in our sensing, it seems to be the right way, but it seems in the world that we see, in reality, people can, the strong overcoming the weak, not supporting the weak one, and they are seemingly the successful one, and while the poor one are the who are not in strong position are the sufferers. So how can we see that, Gregory, to, let's say, which make us sense to this is really the right way? It seems like a fantasy sometimes.
Actually, the conclusion of the concept about, or the impression many people have about the strong overcoming the weak, and therefore they are successful, along such line, that is inconsistent. For considering a very simple example, many who are weak in health go to the hospitals to receive attention such that their health will be rebuilt. If success is based on the strong overcoming the weak, and the weak have gone to the hospitals, is it expected that those people who are healthy should now overcome or do away with those who are not healthy one way or the other? That was the core principles that you had in one nation during the so-called Second World War. For those who are not strong enough in health, they were gathered together to be liquidated. And yet, those who held that principle, when they themselves were unwell, they wanted protection, they wanted to go to the hospital such that they will be taken care of. So you find, humanity, these things have been interpreted so very wrongly. And what they classify as success has been interpreted so very wrongly that one doesn't even know what to make of it. The strong overcoming the weak, or the strong attracting that which is not very strong, that is only possible when that which is stronger should be of help to that which is not as strong. That is only possible through examples or support, as in the case of those who are weak in health. However, because most of these concepts have been grossly distorted, then you find most noble thinking have become entangled in the distorted undergrowths of false opinion. Therefore, you find many can come out of it. Such distorted undergrowths in which that which is noble is suppressed, such a scenario is weak. Therefore, those who are strong first will have to very carefully look into what needs to be done, make decisions on that which they consider as strong points, and enhance, support these strong points to build up, just as you have with those who are unwell, such that those who are not so strong will come to life with the sort of examples which they need to follow, just as Christ did. That is the only way. All the rubbish which is being thrown out there, with many saying, or because one is strong, as in the case of boxing, the one who is not very skilled in boxing, and you have some who is very skilled in boxing beating the daylight out of the other and being given as a prize, that is only possible in very primitive societies. Whether they call themselves advanced societies or not, it's immaterial. By their works, they reveal how primitive they are. They haven't grown to understand that the only way forward is one for all and all for one. The one who is a musician is not the one who is the doctor. The one who is the doctor is not the one who drives the cab. You wouldn't say because one person drives a cab and the other person is a doctor, and therefore you don't need those who drive the cab and they belong to the lower cadre. The same thing with those who are involved in agriculture. You wouldn't say, oh, because I'm the president or I'm the prime minister, and therefore those people who are not taking the same responsibilities as myself, you are superior to them. That is far from it. Even in music, the conductor is only a coordinator. But the conductor cannot compare himself with a pianist who plays such excellent music, or a violinist. The same thing happens in the case of sports. The coach of a football team cannot compare himself to the goalkeeper or the striker or the defender. It must be understood it is one for all and all for one. That is what moves things forward. And each individual must know that they have skills, they have talents, which they have to develop. That is their task. Just as they are striving to develop their own talents, so are others. So one cannot now say, you should be suppressed, and anyone who holds that view has already lost the plot. Before long, here or hereafter, that individual will have to come to terms with what he himself has put in creation, and we have to reap in abundance that which he has sown in creation. That is in accordance with the law. So most of the confusion which has been dished out there and say, in the real world, one has to do this, you have to ignore this, and you have to strive for yourself. The child itself does not teach itself how to speak the language. He has to listen to the language of the parents or the language in the community or the society, and it has to adjust itself. As long as it does not, in its activity, try to bring harm to others. This has become very clear, but many still hold on to their selfish interests, and one can already see it, where these things lead on to.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for this answer and again explanation you've given there, which is very clear. There is a way we are meant to live. We're talking about success. Well, you might see something and call it success when it's actually not success, it's even failure. we said, overcoming strong overcoming the weak. Well, it might look good on something like you said, boxing, for example, but no. Does it any benefit the other one? It looks like it's benefiting one, but actually it's not. There's a suffering going on. Injustice, even you can call it, or even trying to eliminate in the weak. That cannot be. And like you said, there are different roles. You can be prime minister, president, and you can be the farmer. All of them are needed. You can't just say only one type of group of people can exist, the other group of people cannot exist. You need all of them. That's why we keep saying all for one and one for all. So it's not a fantasy, but it's actually the real principle of reality of success, which you should really understand. And then we can follow that. So thank you. Now, in a way this has already been answered. I'm just thinking, we're talking about there are divine laws, natural laws, which implies that there are rules. You cannot do this, or you can do that. And then you wonder, okay, I have this self-interest, whatever it happened to be, and then I decide to choose to follow one rule because it suits me, or I decide not to follow a rule because it doesn't suit me. That's the, how can I say, it appears that people may be acting this way, and why? They have, we're talking about might, Gregory, or strong, meaning might, meaning with material resources, weapons, money, technology, whatever it happens to be. The opponent doesn't have that level of wealth, technology. Then you can say, when I was talking about overcoming, the strong overcoming the weak. In that sense, it looks like, the strong is winning over the weak. That's what it looks like. But when they do that, they're hurting people. And when they hurt people, there will be consequences. So what I see, Gregory, there is in the immediate, there's another difference between, let's say, human working and the divine working. Human being, they do something now, get some result now, and they think that's their job done. They've achieved something. And yet, no, there's a consequence of the longer term, which the people are, of course, they don't wait for that to realize what's going to happen in the longer term. There will be consequences, and of course, which the divine, let's say, take care of that. So, I'm just thinking this question I had about following rules and not following rules. I think the answer is clear. If you follow or disobey rules, or you choose to follow certain rule and not to follow certain other rule, it's just that lead to, you could say, anarchy.
May I come in?
Yes, go ahead.
It must be made very clear that the divine laws, or the laws of nature, the laws of creation, which are expressions of the divine will, these are very far, far away from the rules which communities have put in place. Because the rules which communities have put in place, or nations have put in place, these are been impregnated with unkindness, with wickedness, with one-sidedness. Mention it. So one cannot compare the divine laws with the laws which human spirits have put in place, or which earthmen have put in place. For those who have put these rules in place lack the understanding, all right, of these divine laws. All they have considered are very partial rules, partial laws, which tend to favor them when they think or when they consider they have the upper hand. When, however, they themselves don't have the upper hand, then there is a change. One may look at these from time immemorial. As at the time, if one goes back from the time of Moses, the sort of rules which Pharaoh had put in place to make others whom they consider not as strong as themselves, to make them slaves. Such rules that try to make others slaves, such rules may only emanate from those who themselves are slaves within themselves. They are slaves to their passion because they still haven't understood that being human personalities, others have the right to improve themselves. So you find it that fear is what rules such people. The same fear which made Caiaphas to ensure that Christ must be crucified. Again, if you come to go through all the centuries and you come to the recent past, in the case of the so-called world wars, you'll find fear again manifesting itself. And that fear brandishing a whip over others. And in that particular case, they strive to make others slaves and dependent. That same fear. That is what rules most of these people who haven't matured to that extent to understand it is one for all and all for one. Even if they have all the materials to suppress others. It is that same fear. But until they overcome themselves to understand that that person who considers himself or herself strong must, in one way or the other, strive to understand the challenges of others. That is the first step. Strive first. After all, you are the stronger one. So make an effort to understand the challenges of others. Subsequently, in understanding the challenges of others, the individual is now in a place to offer advice. And in that offering of advice, that in itself is the redemption, which is passed on to others. Without that, that individual that considers himself or herself strong is very weak.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for this point that you've made there. You really, how could I say, have to see this world in a different way, that to benefit all, and rather than, like we were saying, strong overcoming the weak, or whatever one-sided way that we have been living or thinking how this world is. Until we shift to this attitude of all for one and one for all, we are going to get into some destructive way of thinking, which obviously will lead to destruction, not something beneficial. So thank you for that. Now, I agree. When one is, let's say, attacked, in quotes, by a stronger power, whatever they happen to be, and there is, let's say, bully. In school, you have get bully, but you also have it in with countries. And then they have, let's say, are supposed to have a conviction about this is right, that is wrong, and how you act or stand up, you could say, to the bully in this way, in this situation, is how will, let's say, have an impact on the bully as well. If you are power, or even beg and say yes, sir, I will do what you say, sir, or madam, and then you become your conviction is nothing there. And then others who will say, no, I'm going to stand by my principles, even in quotes, if it means my own destruction, but at least I stand by my principle. Stand up for that. So, and then we look at this word, Gregory, back to the word self-interest. Maybe the self-interest about survival or winning, whatever somebody might be thinking about. So my question on this, Gregory, is when you are faced with a bully and you are the weaker one, are you meant to accept that, or how do you respond to that? Because when you don't have the same strength as the bully, because that's what the bully can do to you. He can hurt you more, at least in a physical, violent way, than and you might have, let's say, better principle, but you might not have the strength to fight back. So should you stand by your principle, Gregory, your conviction that no, whatever you're going to do to me, I still stand my ground, because that is the right way?
A very pertinent question. At the same time, one must strive to understand that things don't just happen at random. Before the scenario which you yourself just put forward, before it emerges, individuals, through their experiences, are able to perceive and prepare themselves. And in the preparation of oneself, in vigilance and alertness, the individual is able to defend itself even before the final activities precipitate into gross material happenings. That is one scenario. The scenario where these things then happen and the individual feels he or she is not prepared is because the so-called other person who is weak in strength is because he or she has not prepared for that. If he or she has prepared for this type of thing, then in the preparation it will be shown a way of how it needs to act which will ensure that it becomes victorious. So the individual is not just left to the whims and caprices of others. There are ways in which the individual can prepare itself. And therefore, that advice to watch and to pray becomes very salient in these circumstances. The watchfulness, perpetual watchfulness, perpetual alertness, that is what is helpful. It is only when that is ignored that you have the so-called bully that will make statements on the outside and wish to show others. Of course, there have been many examples where the so-called bullies have tried it, and those who are not as strong, exhibited calmness and a few things, and they won through.
Thanks a lot, Gregory, for this answer. Dear listeners, we've come to the end of the show tonight on the topic of acting in our self-interest in the light of divine will. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion. I would like to now read from the foreword of the Grail Message, which is titled, For Your Guidance. The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I'm addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them a spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and star. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present-day confusion. The following word does not bring a new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all the obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore, awake. A genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you're truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Akrushin. Dear listeners, if you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. www.grail.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing listeners a beautiful week ahead.
Thank you. Same for me, listeners. Have a beautiful week ahead. We'll be back as usual next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time with another topic. Take care, good night, and God bless.